and savvy consumers of information. We propose to do this through an emphasis on communication, critical thinking, creativity, self-management, perseverance, and collaboration. Students will be active partners in authentic learning, offering voice and choice in demonstrating competency.
Thank you. All right, next for announcements. The next school committee meeting will be held on Thursday, October 17th at 7 in the Middle High School Ensemble Room. The Communications and Policy Subcommittees and FEFI's policy working groups have meetings scheduled on the town calendar. Schools and district offices will be closed on Monday, October 14th in observance of Indigenous Peoples Day. Schools will be closed to students on Tuesday, October 15th for Professional Development Day. Are there any other announcements?
The Spooky Walk is happening at Doyon this Saturday from 4:30 to 8. It's a fries event and a community event, and it's super fun. So encourage people to attend.
I have a couple as well. The Noresco Efficiency Project, which is Article 7 on the town meeting warrant, will be having a public information session on Wednesday, October 9th at 7 p.m. In Town Hall Meeting Room A. And another set of announcements is related to the planning process for the potential collaboration between Northern Essex Community College and Whittier Tech. They have a new website that is dedicated to keeping people informed about the project. And that website is www.necc for Northern Essex Community College. So necc.mass.edu/Whittier. And that website will have progress updates, important dates, ways to provide feedback, and relevant links and files to the project. They also are scheduling some virtual public listening sessions, and all that information is on that website I just mentioned. The dates are October 8th, October 29th, November 12th, and November 19th. There's a couple of morning ones and an evening one. So just in an effort to keep us informed about Whittier. Those are the announcements.
Thank you. Any others? All right. Special acknowledgements.
I would like to acknowledge the Ipswich cross-country team over their win over Amesbury yesterday, and the golf team, which an hour ago won their game against Rockport and qualified for the tournament. So that's 2 athletic victories for us so far.
Wonderful. All right. Next, we have public comments. I'm going to read our statement on public comments. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals in the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. While the committee and/or administrators will not typically respond during public comment, the chair, as presiding officer of the meeting, may choose to if she seems it expeditious. Further, should the chair believe that an issue falls outside the purview of the school committee, she may request that citizens direct it to the appropriate person or body so that the matter is given proper consideration. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person and a total of 15 minutes overall, and this will be the only opportunity during this meeting for members of the public to comment. I'm seeing none. Oh, we got one. Okay.
I'm Katie Henry. Do I need to say where I live?
Yes.
I live at
Please.
28 Water Street. I'm just here to kind of talk about something that I think has been missing from the conversation about the MSBA and the new school project, which I think is the actual lived experience of the students in the school. I just think that I'm concerned about a number of things, the size of the school, particularly with the impending amount of units being added with 3A. I'm concerned about the bus times. I'm concerned about the community feeling of the school. I live 0.7 miles away from Winthrop, and my 8-year-old son gets home at 3:55 when he takes the bus. So that's a 55-minute ride, 0.7 miles. I'm concerned about the cost of the buses. It's about $400,000 a year, I think, that we spend now on buses. And I'm assuming that there would be a huge elevation in dependence on bus rides if there was one school at Doyon, which would double that cost, I would imagine. I'm also concerned just about the idea of taking away our students from the downtown and cloistering them away from the downtown. I know that there's been a huge focus on Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, this year in school and focusing on cell phone use. But another one of his pillars is encouraging independence for children and allowing them to be on their own. And I think that having a school in the downtown allows kids independence. And the ability to kind of move independently away from school, take part in library activities without parent or teacher intervention. So generally, I just feel like there's been kind of a lack of emphasis on the school, on the actual experience of the children who will be going to the schools versus the financial and the logistical, like building standpoint. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add that there's information about 3A on the district website, since you brought that up.
Okay.
I'm sorry, on the town website. Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kayla Oliva. I live at One Way County Road. I spoke last year about the football team, and all I got was, we are aware. Nothing's changed. If you guys noticed, there's no JV team. We went from 28 varsity players to, I think, 22, 23. One kid quit last week. Something needs to be done. There's like no enthusiastic at the games, no music. The band is good, but they don't play consistently. And then with the merge that the kids are hearing about Triton and Ipswich, you're going to lose. There's not going to be any football, I think, next year, in my opinion. We lose every single game. Like, it's just common sense. Like, something has to be done. It's either the coach or the director. But we won one game last year and JV won 0. And now there's no JV game. And then on the roster, if you guys see it, is one freshman player. It's frustrating for a parent that there's no football enthusiastic. And I think 2020 was when the last time that they won. What's going on with the football team? I don't think the kids want to do a merge with Triton. Something needs to be done. Again, last year I got is, we are aware, nothing has changed.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. Yes? Oh, okay. Next, the high school student representative report.
I don't have much to report. Student advisory doesn't meet until next Friday. Our meeting this Friday was delayed because of a conflict. I will say, though, speaking off of that last public comment, I have heard through people about the sports teams. I don't know how many of you were at the football game on Friday. Were any of you there? It was pretty rough. I don't know if you saw it. It was like seeing those kids, they were just ran over. And it isn't the first time I've heard concerns from athletes and from parents. I mean, for years at the high school, saying that they, worry about playing football. It deters a lot of students from playing football because they're worried about their safety. And that's just a concern I've heard. The other concern I've heard is that Triton offered to do a co-op team with Ipswich 8th grade for wrestling, and that was refused. And I think if the students want to do a co-op and there's interest in that, I don't know how that would happen, but maybe pursue that. I don't know what the school's policy is on co-op teams. I know usually we've stayed away from them, except for the ski team, which is a co-op with Hamilton Wenham. Right? That's no
Hockey, we have a bunch.
hockey. Okay. So yeah. And then my only other comment was that with the wellness policy draft, a lot of students are really concerned with that. Ipswich is really unique in the fact that we have a lot of extracurricular, both clubs and athletics that students can partake in. And part of the wellness policy, which would prevent the sale of baked goods for bake sales, was particularly concerning to National Honor Society and every single club and class officer I spoke to. There wasn't a single one that said it wasn't a concern. 43 club officers, students, and sports team captains signed saying they did not want bake sales to be banned. 22 staff signed saying they don't want bake sales banned, and 18 club advisors / class advisors said bake sales are really important. NHS fundraises all their money through the fudge sale. That's how we pay for most of our things. I myself sold all my fudge at lunch to other students. and Global Languages Club, which supports a developing child in Latin America. They get all of their funding through bake sales as well. Classes have raised hundreds of dollars through bake sales. It's really important, and it encourages the entrepreneurial spirit of our high school. And it just seems like a big overreach and not something that's really a priority. And that's just what I've been told. There was immediate outrage from everybody. Nobody said we should keep bake sales. There was fear. There's a cross-country bake sale tomorrow, and the captain before I came to this meeting was like we really need bake sales. Like, this is how we make our money. This is one of our only fundraisers that works. We tried to sell stickers, it didn't work. We tried to sell coupons, it didn't work. Bake sales were the only way they could get funding for new uniforms, for team dinners. So it is a really important thing. I know it might sound silly, but a lot of these students that put in hours and hours into these events, bake sales are pretty important. So that's.
Thank you. All right, so we have 2 presentations. Oh, we're good. Okay, so we are going to welcome the softball boosters, who are going to present updates to the high school softball field, and then we will potentially take a vote.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I had to go to a retirement party. So Jonathan Hubbard, Spillers Lane. Do you have to do this like the selectmen's meeting or?
You're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So Jonathan Hubbard, Spillers Lane. I'm here to represent the Ipswich High School softball boosters and the Ipswich Travel softball. As some of you may know, there's a softball field out behind the high school and between the school and the football field that is completely underutilized, due in fact to the backstops being inadequate for high school level softball, right? So we've done some work to raise some funds to add the brand new backstop and dugout enclosures so the girls could be able to use that as a softball field. I'm not sure if anyone knows or not, but the softball program has grown exponentially over the last few years, where we went from only having a varsity team and basically having minimal numbers on the varsity team to now last year 32 girls came out for both teams. So, which is it's a lot of players, so which is great. And in the junior levels, we've had 2 teams on all the junior levels, all the way down to the farm program. So that's 20 to 25 kids that are going to be coming up in the next few years. So there will be a JV team going forward for a long time, which would necessitate. I can't talk. I've already had to give a speech tonight, so I'm sorry. We need 2 fields basically, and the problem is we only have Bialik Park right now. And last year they did an emergency thing to put the fields up at Doyon, which those fields are, outdated and worn and basically good for the over 30 men's softball in the summer, but definitely not good for a high performance softball league. There's no fences around the dugouts, so it's a safety issue up there. And it was also running into an issue where the games would coincide sometimes with the after school programs up there, so people come and going out of the fields, and that isn't something we probably want to do. So we came up with this plan to upgrade the backstop and the dugouts so we can have 2 fields that can be used by the varsity and JV team, which will allow us to have a successful program going forward. The Ipswich Education Fund, the softball boosters met with them, and they donated a substantial amount of money towards the project. And the high school boosters and the Ipswich Travel softball program believe strongly in this, so our kids can have a place to move up to, and we're going to donate the rest of the money to make sure it happens. So the next step is to get approval from the school committee so we can actually do the work.
Okay, I can backfill some of this. And I met with John Hubbard and Michael Tefin on September 4th to talk about the potential of redoing the field, the concerns that were out there. Some of the improvements would include refurbishing the infield, installing new pitcher's mound, and completing a new backstop and putting the dugout area fencing. We are seeing an increase in numbers. We've been working with the youth program and listening to how those programs are functioning. John, we talked about the fact that we did try to have them up at the fields behind Doyon, with the EDP program being there, and the start times for games was a lot of confusion. And traffic issues. So I think, as a athletic department, we certainly support this effort. The one concern that I have when we talk about this is where the field is next to the road, making sure that we have adequate clamshell around home plate or netting or something, so that we don't have to worry about cars in the parking lot or cars coming around. Otherwise, I think it's a great opportunity. As was reported, they met with the IEF, and the IEF has spent $12,000 notice here for the funding of the project, and then boosters themselves also have additional funding to do that. So if the school committee approves this, then we can start that work. One of the things that I wanted to check on, and I checked on it last night, was we also have another group working on the field house at the track and football field. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be any issue with where they're going to need to trench for their water and sewer, and where outfield is going for this, because I didn't want these folks putting in and fixing up an outfield and have it dug up by another building project. But I went over that last night.
Yeah.
Concerns, nor does Tom.
I'm hearing that it's hard to hear you at home for people that are watching on video. If you can try to lean in, otherwise we'll check the microphones. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll say I'm supportive of it. My only question, I know that's been discussed, is after this year, there's ongoing maintenance and for the cost of that. So we would take on, just discuss that so we know how to handle future years.
Just take it on. I mean, the fields are used out there, and so they're maintained by Turf Pro already.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so they were maintaining both fields up at Doyon and that, so yeah, we're just moving the location so it's a better place for the girls to be.
Other questions?
Who maintains the field at Bialik? Is that the parks or is that us?
I believe
That's
so.
like a joint effort, so
Joint
the
effort.
parks take care of it most of the time, but during school season, the school hires pro turf to get the field ready for
Okay.
the games. So during the off season, the parks take care of it, but it's mostly volunteers. We spend a lot of time up there for we run the summer league program too and that was the other issue too. We only had one field this summer to play on. So we only could offer U18, which is basically the varsity level summer league. We wanted to have a U14 team, but we couldn't get enough scheduled time because we had to share the field up at Bialik with a Frisbee league, 2 over 30 leagues. So it just wasn't enough time for the field. So we only could have one team this year. So, which was unfortunate because the kids wanted to play. So.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Being that we just talked about the football and wrestling that, is people aren't participating in necessarily. I think this is great because there's clearly a lot of interest, and to make sure that it's a healthy league. So as it will give people an option to say, oh, yeah, this is great. We get practices on a regular schedule. And so thank you.
I'll just say,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, appreciate you securing the funding. That's really helpful. And
So
anything.
all people in this room
Yeah,
did a lot of
thank
hard
you.
work.
And my daughter participated in softball, as you know, so you have a great booster program and a great program from the really young ages. So it's great to see. And I think anything we can do to keep our teams on this property and less shuttling kids to be at Bialik or Mile Lane is, that's safer to keep our kids here. So to better utilize that field is good.
At least to a vibrant campus too, which I always love. I think that's
Yeah, more
something
games.
that's overlooked a lot, but if we just bring it back, not only is it just to be more convenient, but it's a wonderful thing, just driving through and seeing all the.
It's good for the team too to be able to use the locker rooms and just be able to
Right,
come
that
right
too.
outside.
Yeah.
Not have to take all the stuff down there. So it makes them feel a little bit more important that they have locker rooms and stuff. So.
And gym classes too, for when gym classes play Lifetime Sports and it plays event games like that, so that might be useful for them too.
I have a question. And I'm sorry if I missed it. What's the timeline? When will it start? How
Well, we're
long will it take?
hoping,
And
we want to try to get it done before the construction season. I mean, it's not much construction, we're putting some fencing up, but we're hoping to get the fencing done before the winter so we can be ready to go in the spring. The field work will just be prepped in the spring once everything defrosts, so.
awesome. Any further questions?
The motion
Done with
look like,
public comment.
John Driscoll,
this is the approval of
part of the presentation.
construction, we're not receiving funds yet. I would create the motion.
So I think the motion would be to approve the,
Updates to the high school
Yeah,
softball
yeah.
fields by the softball boosters.
yeah, by the softball, and then when the project is done, because the money would, they're gonna pay for it, and then they're gonna, then the school would then accept it,
Yeah, okay.
essentially. So the motion would be to approve the upgrades to the softball field.
I move that we approve the updates to the softball field at the high school.
Second.
Okay, moved by Sasha, seconded by Jen. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, 7-0, the motion passes. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wasn't here for public comments, we probably didn't
Oh, okay.
hear say something.
Or maybe not.
All right, so next we have a discussion and potential vote on the placement of a shed at the Paul F. Doyon Memorial School, and we welcome the Doyon Fries president, Beth Galander.
Hi, Beth Galander, 32 Farley. I am the Doyon Fries president. So Fries would like to build a shed on Doyon property. We will fund it. We just, as we're all aware, there's very limited space in our elementary schools. So this solves that issue for us. We are building it where it's movable. So should there ever be a change, we are happy to move it to another location or further back. So that's what we're doing. We just have limited space from everything. So, Fries does events like the Spooky Walk. So we have our own, products. And so right now they're in board members' houses. And we also feel like that might be a limitation for a board member. If they were to live in an apartment, they wouldn't be able to keep what we currently keep at everybody's houses.
Yeah,
Primarily storage or exclusively storage.
Exclusively storage.
Yeah, so I can backfill some of the information there. The Spooky Walk, I think there's like literally 6 or 8 enormous totes of things that they've collected for the Spooky Walk, and it's been moved from people's front porch to back porch to the stage for a while. We're in desperate need of a shed. The shed is being built by the construction program at Medford High School. There's a member of the Fries group who works there and was able to work that through. We looked at a couple different locations on the site. We settled on a site that's if you're standing out front of the Paul F. Doyon Memorial School, the left side of the building, on the back side of the playground, the preschool playground. So on the side of the building, so that they can build it out there. They won't need access to the building. It won't disrupt the preschool students entering or exit the building for their activities. But yet it's close enough to everything that they'll be able to get all their materials on site. And then when it's in use, it's right there and it'll be a locked building. So.
That was my only question, is it's going to be locked?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No. This is similar.
just-
We just need a motion to support, so.
Need a motion to support. The shed is going to be 8 by 12, and it's about 11 feet high at the ridge. So it's a good sized shed that they're building.
Motion,
Have the stage cleared also.
Yeah, it's actually already cleared right now. It's sitting at someone's house. So it had to be cleared before school began. So.
motion to support the building of a shed by Fry's at the Doyon School playground.
Second.
Moved by Jen, second by Haley. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, the motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
All right, so the next item on the agenda, we are going to actually move to next week, which was going to be the discussion and vote on the Ipswich Educators Association collective bargaining unit agreements for Unit A, ESP, and para educators.
So essentially, the process is such that, and as you've seen in the media and social media, the school committee has reached tentative agreements with all three of the IEA bargaining units. And then what happens from there is those agreements are formalized, written up, reviewed. They go back and forth between the parties. And then once the documents are finalized, then they go to the representative groups for review and a ratification vote. So a lot of that took place earlier this week. I believe that the teachers, the IEA units met earlier this afternoon for an informational review, and I believe they're scheduled to ratify the contracts next week, I believe on Monday. So typically what happens is the school committee wouldn't ratify them until after the bargaining units ratify. So while we discuss them in the executive session this evening, similarly to what the bargaining units did in their meeting, we will bring this back for a formal ratification vote of the school committee at the October 17th meeting. So essentially, we'll be tabling this agenda item for this evening.
All right, thank you. Next item, school committee workshop recap, which was on the future of an elementary school building project, and Sasha's gonna present.
Yeah, I would like to share. I'm unable to do that. Somebody else who-
Oh.
I'm not able to do it.
It's not, do you want it?
Somebody else that is able to present.
Open it. I mean, you'll talk and I just showed it.
Yeah, I just needed to get it up there so that for anyone
Is
watching.
this what you just emailed us at 5:46? This?
You're gonna put it up there?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Oh,
Tell me to
it
do
might be in
it.
there.
Give the-
What? Did you talk to me? It's like, he has.
Oh.
It's weird. Look at the card. Or if you want to swap seats or something. Yeah, let's try it. Yeah, let's try this one.
Oh, man.
Just give him.
That's
right, you got it.
This is an unplug and plug back in situation.
Oh.
I might be getting pulled out of here.
Oh.
Oh, it's just touching.
You know, try the other one. You know, start.
You don't make any sudden movement.
No breathing.
move at all, you're fine.
I'm gonna stay here and take the mic now.
Sharp and natural does not show up.
It's the 4.
Perfect, thank you. So the school committee met last for a workshop to discuss the approach for the future elementary school building project. For context, in April, we submitted the SOI to the MSBA with the intention to study a consolidated school at the Doyon site. We've been spending time in several of our meetings, subcommittee meetings, continuing to progress that even past the submission of the SOI. The focus of our workshop was in 3 main areas. The first was around the education plan, but particularly the needs of the students and our teachers and our administrators. The second that we discussed was comparative project costs. And the third was town sentiment. What have we heard from the town? Where are the needs? How do we think about the community as it is today, and what do we want the community to look like going forward? We discussed it with the intention of developing an approach to move forward, and we talked about that we will be voting in our meeting in later in October. The intention is to decide on whether we pursue a single community school at Doyon, or we continue with 2 separate schools. And the 3 primary factors that we consider, and I wanted to point out, because we are going to talk about the project cost. Our intention is not to project what it would cost to build a school in Ipswich. What we did was we looked at MSBA data that they published on previous builds, so that we could look at that as a comparison point for what one community school would look like versus 2 separate schools. We use it as a comparison, not to try to determine what it would cost for Ipswich, but what is the relative difference of one school versus 2. For the education plan, I'm going to talk about the highlights, like what are the needs of students, administrators. We talked about, we looked at different options and timing for schools, and then we evaluated both standard schools and model schools. We looked at what the MSBA published, and we used their data to do that. Third piece is the town sentiment. What have we heard from the town when this project began years ago? What have we heard from the town recently? What we heard from our teachers, parents, and then what are we thinking about that we want the community to look like going forward? The first part of our discussion is presented by the superintendent with feedback from the elementary school principals. Was around 3 main areas. First was great configuration and the layout of the new building. So considerations there to provide flexibility to the students and their needs. The second, related, is the need for specialized programs and the consolidation, of the co-teaching model. Attention with this one again is we're unable to fully meet the needs of our students and teachers, administrators because of the structure of the building. They're doing a wonderful job with what they have. We are doing all of them a disservice with the limitations that are currently in place. The third, very much in the same vein, adequate spaces for specialists, therapists, and small group learning. What you can see here is we're truly thinking broadly about not just how many students are going in, how many classrooms do we need, how might the school grow, but we're thinking about all, but truly what is the educational needs and how does the physical space in the building relate to how we deliver education to us. Key takeaway that was brought up from that, you take from these 3 items, is that the single school gives us greater flexibility to meet those. questions came up about when we have those bubble classrooms. As we anticipate growth in 1 year or over time, the single community school would give us better flexibility. The second main area that we talked about was the project cost and timing. There's 3 scenarios that we looked at. To develop the numbers, the MSBA publishes a list of 71 school building projects. 61 of those are new buildings. The other 10 were major renovations. We did not look at those. What we did is we used their data instead of projecting what we think a school in Ipswich might look like. We used MSBA data for completed projects. The 3 scenarios that we looked at were, the first is a single community school at the Doyon site. The second, is if we had 2 separate schools, one funded by the MSBA and the second not funded by the MSBA. And then the third scenario was 2 separate schools, both of them funded by the MSBA. And I would point out with this scenario, while we modeled it, there are not examples of the MSBA funding 2 elementary schools in a town of a similar size. They do it in cities where there are a significant number of elementary schools, and they've done it in towns where there is an elementary school and a high school. So we did not see precedent for this, but we've been asked the question, so we wanted to model it for comparison purposes. The first scenario, the average cost for a school for about 800 students is $52.5 million. On average, what it costs the town to build is $102 million. And on average, the MSBA grants are $50 million. Excuse me. In the second scenario, we looked at what is the cost of approximately 350 to 400 student school. The average cost to build a school of that size is $71 million. The average grant funding is $24 million. So if we had 2 schools at $71 million, one is funded at 24, the total amount is $117 million. The key takeaway here, not so much the specific dollar amount, the 2 schools in that scenario is 124% more. It is more than double to build those 2 schools. The third scenario assumes that both are funded, so 2 schools at $71 million, both get MSBA funding for $24 million. And while we modeled it, we have not seen that in the data that the MSBA provides. I would also note that there are years delay in both of these scenarios of building the first school and the second. And even in that scenario where both schools are funded, it's still 76% more to build 2 separate schools. And so the last thing I'll highlight is for those schools, we looked at 31 schools to come up with that comparative data. Some of the examples that have been talked about and we've heard in town, from reports and other areas, use a single school as an example. And it's wonderful to use the example, but we wanted to make sure that we were providing robust numbers across multiple schools, all of the dollars adjusted for 2024, so that we look broadly across different size schools, different towns. The last comment before we move to the last piece. Also in the material for tonight is all the schools we looked at. There were 11 schools that are in the 700 to 900 range. They're all listed in the materials here. That's also online. There are 21 schools that we looked at that are in that 300 to 500 range. Those are all listed, and there's additional details specifically with the links to the MSBA data. This is not Ipswich School Committee data. This is on the MSBA site. It is just average school size.
Hey,
The
Sasha.
takeaway here is, as we think about the differences of the value of one school to the educational differences, the considerations we have for the town is think about the difference in the taxpayer impact, and are those differences worth for the additional cost? Yeah.
A quick question, and maybe you said this and I missed it. So you averaged the 11 schools. Did you bring, if one of the 11 schools was built in 2010, did you use 2010 dollars, or did you bring them all up to 20? I think I know the answer. I just want to make sure.
It's important because there's a range of the schools. It's all brought to 2024 dollars, so it's an apples to apples comparison.
Using what escalation?
using 4%, assumed 4% inflation consistently year over year.
My only question is, I know the square foot per school varies. How did you determine like the price per square foot and then decided like per square foot of what school we need, or?
So in the
Full
list of schools at the end of the material,
Mhm.
it lists all the schools, the cost, including the square foot.
Okay.
So you or anybody else can take a look at it. I did not look at the cost per square foot. I looked at the cost, or I looked at schools with a range from 300 to 500 for the second scenario, and from 700 to 900 for the second scenario. So we were representative of the number of the number of students that we need, the number of students that the Ipswich district has. Didn't want to project the number of square footage because that's based on our design and feasibility and the space, and there's just a lot of variables there. So while we have that information, we based it off of the number of students, which we have very good data about.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
It's a great question. Thank you. Yeah. All right. The third major, or sorry, one more piece on the MSBA data, because it's been lots of discussion, questions, but I thought it was helpful to one more piece, particularly about the model schools, and then I'll go to and the third part. The school committee looked at 19 model schools that are published by the MSBA. Again, the link directly to the list that they provide is included here. Model schools can potentially be less expensive, and so it's absolutely an option that we should consider. But that's something for us to work in partnership with the MSBA on as we move into the feasibility part of this work, which would be after we're accepted by the MSBA in December. The one thing in terms of the timing that has come up, we've gotten lots of questions about, the MSBA published on their site is that projects get completed on average of 85 days sooner. It's not years, which makes sense because what speeds up is that upfront architecture, design, engineering piece. The construction doesn't get sped up just because it's a model school. And so it is faster, and on average, it's 85 days faster.
And that's information from MSBA, because I know there was actually an article in the paper today that cited, years earlier, millions of dollars less. That's not accurate.
Yeah, I've heard that as well, and that's why I wanted to specifically reference the 85 days that the MSBA publishes that. That is not analysis that we did. I'm literally quoting from the MSBA's site. Yep. And then last comment, absolutely looking at model schools, there's tremendous value in it. We need to evaluate it just like we would with everything else as part of the feasibility study. We will do that in partnership with the MSBA once we move into feasibility.
The model schools, so the schools that you're talking about are schools that were models of a school.
That's right. The way the
Okay.
model school program works is there's a set of schools that were built originally. That's like your template, if you will. And then there are schools that were built later based off of those templates. And so what they do is they pick up that design and it speeds up that process. That's where that 85 days comes from. So there are changes that need to be made because it's not exactly identical in every single town, but it helps to speed up the process because you're looking at work that was done before from those template or from those original schools. That's right.
So
And
this,
the list of the 19 are the schools that were built based off of those original list.
so there's some flexibility in how we want our school. We don't have to do exactly as, okay.
Absolutely. It is not a prefab school that gets delivered on a truck and dropped off. It is based off of model design so that it works for your town. And that's part of why we need to evaluate during feasibility. Yeah.
So in 2016, I believe MSBA discontinued giving incentive points for model schools. How many schools have participated in the program since 2016 of those 19?
Of the 19 that they list,
2000, what year did you say, 17?
16.
so
One.
previously the MSBA offered incentives, which is an added benefit for the schools to build. Of the 19 that they list, only one school was completed and built after 2016, which was the Good Now Brothers School in 2020. All other 18 are prior to 2016.
Okay. And then I don't
That
know. that-
data, just if you want to look at it while we're talking, or if other people want to be able to look at it, are in the folder.
Okay.
The schools that were compared for model schools that we spent a great deal of time looking at last night, and we talked only briefly about it at the workshop, so we didn't choose to highlight it here tonight because we wanted this to reflect what we did at the workshop. But those numbers are all there.
Which is also on the MSBA website.
It
It's
is,
just kind
yeah.
of tricky.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a little bit tricky to find.
Yeah,
but
so
it's all public data.
that's right. It's not to say that there isn't schools that are in process. We worked very specifically off what the MSBA published as the schools they point to for districts that are doing this kind of research, and so that's where this list is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one school since 2016, and the MSBA partners with, I don't know, a dozen, or I don't know the specific number per year, but that's an interesting
Yeah.
figure. Okay.
And 18 dating back to what's the first year of the data?
2011. Excuse me, yeah.
And the incentive points were pretty substantial. I want to say it was like 5% more reimbursement way back when they used to provide incentive points. So there was sort of a flurry of model schools, and it seems, in those years from like 2011 to 2014.
Yeah, it was a tremendous benefit. But
yeah.
I think that was to Diana's point. You're not seeing that at the same rate because the incentives aren't available. Yep.
But from what we did talk about at the workshop, there seemed to be agreement in my mind that, we would be foolish not to look into it. Because
Absolutely. We
given
certainly
everything
should
that's
continue
going on in our community, if there's a chance we can do things faster and less expensively,
faster
we
and
should
less
look into it.
Absolutely.
But there are, I just think it's not a given at this point. We would need to look into it, like you said, when we get accepted.
It's a great point. Absolutely. Yep. Okay. We move to the last piece that we discussed, and there's been more discussion on this than anything else. We spent a good amount of time on the finances. That's because it was the first time we really spent a dedicated amount of time on the finances in the last year-ish. Most of the discussions over the last several years are fit, culture, community. What do we want to look at? What we highlighted here, in addition to that, was when we looked back and we formally asked the town. In 2018, 64% supported the single community school at Doyon. On the ballot question, non-binding, but ballot question in 2023, 55% supported it. I would also point out there were 4 options there, as opposed to just a yes or no option in 2018. And during the 2020 listening sessions, all that information was captured. The significant majority of the sentiment there was around a consolidated community school at the Doyon site. And a lot of the comments and feedback were, make sure you take these things into consideration. And so we have wonderful, robust information from the town over the last several years about things that we should be considering as we move forward with the project. The other piece that we talked about that you see on the right side was town engagement. How do we continue to engage the town? What are different things that we have heard that the town is looking for? How do we publish more information? How do we hear more from residents, teachers, to make sure we are continuing to think about the needs of the town, but also continuing to share more information. We have heard tons of questions. Comment was made already of there's some misinformation or misunderstanding of what some of our options are. So how do we make sure we provide greater clarity as we continue to move forward? And that was it. I'll note that in the material, there's additional summary of the listening sessions. There's references to where we found everything in the MSBA site, including the additional data, and just for ease, specifically listed all of the schools that were included in the financial analysis. So you have the name of the school, cost, the $2024. Charlie, your question, the square footage, the number of students that attend. Want to make sure we made all of that available to anyone that is watching, listening, so that all of you had it as well. We talked through it, but I also included the details here as well.
So the year is that the school was finished or they were submitted? School was finished. Okay.
Awesome.
Do we also look at how one school would reduce staff budgets? Because I know there might be overlapping positions, or is that?
We did not. There's
Okay.
lots of different scenarios along those lines. We said once we determine an approach, great question, lots of things we need to consider. The intention of the workshop is we see that the next major decision for us to make is community school at Doyon or separate schools. And so we want to make a decision on that, and we move into feasibility, and that helps us answer a lot of the next questions. And then once we get through that, we have a whole series. And so we're trying to be judicious about what we're addressing at this point in time ahead of acceptance from the MSBA.
And then for the one elementary school, I know that would they fit at the Doyon site? Because I know it is a narrow site that was raised last time.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question.
Okay,
That
yeah.
we also have gotten multiple times in, I think, when the work was done in I want to say it was 26, at the last project, designed a building that would fit at the Doyon site. Yeah, so it's not just we believe, we know for a fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Wait, oh, sorry. Did you put the link to the model school class?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well,
That's it, yeah.
thank you again to that working group. We've done a lot of work, and I think it's been really helpful the way that the information's been presented for our group as a whole to have a productive conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. All right, next item is discussion on special town meeting warrant articles 4 and 5. So as we kind of talked about when we voted on our recommendations for the warrant articles, there was a question of whether or not we should opine on Articles 4 and 5. So the purpose of this discussion is not on the articles themselves, but do we want to signal to the town moderator that we plan to radom these at town? I guess that's a redundancy. Just vote on them at town meeting. So I'm opening it up for discussion.
I mentioned this last time. I am personally certainly in favor of both of these. My suggestion that we weigh in is because it has an implication on the tax base, which affects the school budget. And so because of that, I suggested that we should take a position on it as a school committee.
Okay, any,
If we did take a position, why do we have to wait for the, I'm not saying that we should or should. I know my thought, but what's the process of like why we would wait till the special town meeting as opposed to like vote prior?
good question.
Yeah, thank you.
So we can't vote tonight, I guess, because it's not
Oh, right.
on our
Sure.
agenda to vote, I believe. But we could put it on the agenda for the 17th if we want to vote on it ahead of town meeting,
I was
or
just
we
curious.
could,
I'm not saying we have to, but
Yeah.
I was just wondering why.
yeah, or we could wait till town meeting to kind of get the presentations. So,
I think we missed sort of the cutoff for the
For the book.
FinCom
Yes.
booklet.
Yeah.
So usually, I mean, but yeah, we could vote. I don't see why we couldn't vote now, but voting now, we still would have, I think, missed that deadline because I think that went to the printer yesterday.
Yeah, it wouldn't make the book, but there, over time, there have been articles that were on the warrant that members of the school committee weren't sure about. And so one of two things happened. Either we weren't sure, the school committee, because I don't vote, the school committee wasn't sure about the article or wasn't sure of the impact that it had on the schools and whether or not they should take a position. But there's also been articles in the past where the school committee felt that they didn't have enough information and wanted to wait for the formal presentations at the town meeting floor before they made a decision. So
Was there some information that we wanted, some numbers related to that we were going to do?
Yeah, I mean, do we know the tax impact?
Yeah, there was,
They sent it to us. Oh, I don't know for which one, but the hero.
For the HEROES Act, it would be one, right? I mean, that's a tax break for a certain segment. I have
Yeah.
no idea if that's been articulated yet or not.
so that was in the email.
That was an email, yeah.
You look like you're going to say something. No?
Nope,
Oh,
good.
sorry. Okay. The other one is a deferral. So I think we have three options. We can choose not to take a position on this. We could choose to vote on these on the 17th and try to get more information and just get them done the 17th, or we could take a position at town meeting.
I agree with Sasha to take a position at town meeting.
Okay. I'm hearing We don't have to do official vote, but I'm hearing two people want to take a position at town meeting. Does anybody feel
That's fine. On both?
differently on
Okay.
both?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
All right, so we will plan to hear what's said at town meeting, take a position, and we will indicate that to the moderator.
That and Haley's question gives us an opportunity. If we do have questions about it, if there's any more information we need, it gives us between now and town meeting to ask that or to go find it ourselves as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
Okay. Good plan. All right. Next, most exciting part of the evening, policy updates and approvals.
Diana, not to jinx it, but we are ahead of schedule. Oh, that's why I said not to jinx it. That counts. That counts.
I was counting the minutes when we were trying to get the computer set up, and I was like, oh no. All right, so we will start with policy ADF. I'll let you introduce it because this is actually put together by a group that is your group. Yes.
So prior to COVID, we had a wellness committee that when COVID hit, they quickly transitioned into the return to learn and, sort of the COVID response oversight group, if you will. And so coming out of COVID, we were slow to get that restarted. We put together the committee again last year. Our first order of business was to look at the existing wellness policy. And we spent a significant amount of time looking at not only our policy, but the model policy from the MASC, as well as policies from around the Commonwealth. We drafted and spent several meetings, 3 or 4 meetings at least, looking at the various policies, talking about different components of the policies. And what you see before you this evening is the draft of the wellness policy that we're presenting to the school committee for review. As most of our policies that we review are simply that, they're a review of existing policy. This is a brand new policy essentially, and so we're going to bring this to the school committee for a second read and approval at this October 17th meeting. So for our purposes this evening, if we, please review it and we can talk about it. I can answer any questions that folks may have. And then the second piece to it is I had applied for to be part of a group to look at our wellness policy over the course of the next year. With Fitchburg State has a extensive program. So I applied not knowing what it was going to entail fully. We were accepted into the program. So over the course of this year, we'll be revisiting this policy and making other recommendations. And then in the spring, I would bring it back. But right now, I want to get a policy on the books so that we have an approved policy to work with. That organization program will work with us to make sure that we have all of the necessary components that are mandated by statute, which there are quite a few, as well as meeting all of the nutrition standards that we have to abide by, that are put out by the USDA. And so you'll see various references in that draft policy to the food service program and the USDA and what snacks and things can be sold or given out during the course of the school day. They have to meet certain criteria. It's important to note that the policy, while it recommends that the healthy foods, if you will, be, served all the time. The policy is only essentially in effect during school hours. So, so if there was a fundraiser outside of school hours, things like that, those things can still happen, although we would encourage students to, and clubs, not just the advisors to the students, to find other sources. But so that's basically it. I don't know, Diana, if you want to add anything as the chair of the policy committee.
Yes, and a sitting member on the wellness committee. I just want to point out that having a wellness policy and a wellness committee is a state law. So we need to do it and have it. And that any recommendations, like Dr. Blake said, that within the policy are within the state regulations for nutrition and activity currently.
A couple of
That's all I have to
questions
say.
about like who else has seen this besides the policy? Like, have you run it by? I guess my questions are the administrators, the teachers, and the food service.
Food service actively sits on the committee. So the food service director has been involved from the get-go. This is not, I think I did share it with the admin team, but not a formal
I
conversation.
was
It
just
hasn't been
curious.
approved
I
yet.
guess I'm just curious if it makes.
Oh, and I'm sorry, John Stafford, the school nurse, is also involved
It's on the committee.
on the committee. So,
I'm just curious if it's. I want to approve something that is supported by everybody in the buildings, and we don't get pushback from. Been used to having, I don't know, cupcakes for birthdays or handing out reusable water bottles or whatever it may be. Yeah, that it's been vetted by people that
Yes.
support it. And follow
Yes, for sure. We need buy-in, but I think, like Dr. Blake said too, there's references to the regulations, so we're advising it with good reason. And I think for everybody who sits on our committee, we see the school day. It's an educational environment, and how we approach food, nutrition, activity is part of everybody's, ongoing education in life. So we're trying to do the right thing.
I will say one of the teachers that signed the petition against the policy, specifically to the sale of baked goods, noted that there was no teacher on the wellness committee. If it were to go through, there's a school administrator, but there's no teacher, which might be important to add. In their mind, it was important to have teacher representation as well, because it does affect a lot of in-classroom activities specific to teachers. A lot of teachers do give out snacks and food, so it might be good to have a teacher in general on the committee. That was recommended to me.
Yeah, maybe after the
teacher
meeting,
began.
you can give Dr. Blake the name.
I'd love to see the petition.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of the building wellness coordinator, obviously it says it's designated by the wellness program coordinator. I may have dropped down too far to see who is the program.
It would be I think it would be a designee in each building,
Like a staff member.
but the coordinator
obviously,
would be
teacher.
me for the district.
Okay.
Here, okay. I was just asking, I'm on the policy committee, subcommittee. I'm just reading again, fundraising, snacks, nutrition standards may be sold. So it does include fundraising, right? That I remember.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's for during the school day.
Okay. So to be clear, it's not for like the fundraising that Charlie's talking about.
It is.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is because what they do a lot of bake sales during the school day,
Okay.
during lunches.
Okay.
So
Can there be an amendment or like an adjustment after hearing what Charlie said and the funds that are connected to it? Is there a change that could be adjusted? Keep the bulk of it, but that part, yeah.
All within the regulations
Okay.
that are in existence.
Okay.
So I think we can dive a little deeper and make sure we're answering all the questions that are coming up, but
It doesn't prevent the fundraising. We make sure that the fundraising meets these guidelines. And so what I would suggest is supportive of what's in here, but totally recognize that that may create a gap. And so how separately can we address the fundraising, but still moving forward with what's outlined here? I think let's try to separate those two things.
And in actually doing the deep dive into the policy, it may be the case that we're not supposed to be having all of the fundraisers at lunchtime, and we have been, and now we know better, so we have to do better. Right.
Is it something we can phase in? Again, I know in terms of because it says it does include, right, the foods and beverages are sold as part of the school-sponsored fundraising activities. Is there a way, it's just so like all of a sudden they're not, all of a sudden have no money, or, is there like a phase in that can be done over this year, or, I'm seriously asking, I don't know if that's possible, but I'm just thinking like if they go from a healthy fundraising effort to then not being able to sell what they've usually been selling. Unless we come up with some ideas we can sell.
things are ongoing. We can't stop what's in motion, but I think if there are regulations out there, we should be following them.
Okay.
So of the parents, there's one parent on the committee and one citizen. So was the parent, are there any high school parents on this committee?
The middle school and the elementary parent, but the students are not in the district.
Okay.
There's a community member, a community representative.
Yeah. And that community representative, are they a parent in the district?
They are affiliated with a community group.
Sorry, can you speak up?
Getting the list.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
no,
I'm
I have
having a
it.
hard time hearing.
We're all like,
Need a-
So while we're looking for the list, I'll just make a comment that having been a high school parent and understanding how much the bake sales add to camaraderie and team building and really fuel the funds of student clubs. When I click on this USDA Smart Snacks in School, I see elementary school kids getting apples. Nutrition facts on a popcorn bag. I would hate to be putting the kibosh on bake sales that have helped these kids so much.
It's also, adding on to this, it just came to my head that a lot of times in the foreign language classes, we also have like bake a dish, bring it in, learn about the culture. That's another thing that would be impacted. And another aspect to it is that there are teachers and staff who do have candy. Like if kids are having a bad day, they can take a piece of candy, and that would also be impacted. And then my other question is, would this impact teachers as well? Because it doesn't, or would it just be all food provided during the day? Would that include food for teachers in the lunchroom or just for students? And I mean in the break room for teachers or just for students in the school? Because it does say all food and beverages made available on campus during the school day. So would that impact staff as well? Through the school district. Okay.
Not what you bring in.
Right.
I have two things that I guess, like Dr. Blake said, we looked at a lot of districts that have really nicely put wellness policies. So what is suggested here is within regulation and it's happening in other districts. So I feel confident that we could work within these guidelines in Ipswich as well and still do all the things we love to do and want to do. In terms of the group, so we have a parent guardian, I'm sorry, a parent who is, we have a middle school parent who is involved with nutritional efforts. And we have a high school student, we have a nurse, a school nurse, we have a the food service director, we have me, I'm also a nurse. We have Dr. Blake, we have a parent of elementary students who has a master's in public health, and we have a community member who is affiliated with an athletic association, I guess.
I can't hear you. I missed the last one.
The last one, a community member associated with an athletic association.
I don't know what it'll add, but even the high school nurse was against the ban on bake sales, and she's also a nurse. Just saying. There were a handful of teachers. I did this yesterday, so I didn't have a lot of time to ask all the staff at the school, but there was less than 5 teachers who didn't want to sign. Everybody else was super on board and was really upset that they were being taken away, because it is a big part of the high school. I know it might sound silly and kind of, dumb, but after a long week, had a big test, sometimes what really cheers you up is a brownie or a cookie, or during R block or during school lunches. It's not really sold during R block because that is academic time, but school lunches are a big part of when goods are sold. And after school, while that works for a lot of other districts, I'm sure, I don't know how it works at other districts, but a lot of students go have athletics right after school, or they have another event, or they have instruments right after school. So it's difficult to have a student who's a student athlete, a musician, and a member of a club to organize fundraising and everything. And then I was asked by one of the officers for the Interact Club if they were allowed to sell at football games, because if they can't sell during the school, they were thinking of selling at athletic events. And that reminded me that might really hurt the athletic boosters too, because if you're at a price war with different venues, if you're selling against the cheerleaders or the football team or the field hockey team, I think that would not only hurt clubs, but also athletics, because now you're competing against different groups. So also,
I think it's helpful to hear the considerations that the group has brought up. Can I suggest to move it forward? I know you're still continuing to work on it. Bring it back to the subcommittee, or the broader group, share some of the concerns that were raised, come back with recommendations of here's some alternatives, here's how we can adjust. That'd be okay? I think it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd volunteer to look in, I mean, maybe you've already done this, look into see what other districts do, if there's any other sort of compromise, or, like, I mean, I'm a dietitian, so I'm usually all for this stuff. And I've made many brownies that I give to my kids at 7:15 a.m. And I'm like, I can't believe we're just going to go sell brownies at 7:15 in the morning to kids, but that happens. So I don't know. I'm happy to look into what other districts are doing. I mean, can we sell banana bread and I've worked on this stuff in the past too. I remember there used to be ice cream available at Doyon every day. I don't know if it still is, but I worked for a long time, and to just say, can we just have it available on Fridays maybe? I mean, is there a compromise between no baked goods ever versus maybe you just have bake sales once a week, or in the morning ones have to be healthy food, but the afternoon ones can be junk food. I don't know. I just didn't know if there's any wiggle room.
The only other thing that I would want to mention, that I'm sure you guys have taken this into consideration, or how the regulations were formed may have, but there's something to be said, I think, for students having the ability to learn how to make that discernment for themselves around what's offered and what's healthy and what they choose, whether they buy it at 7:15 in the morning and consume it at 7:15. You know what I mean? I think that there's something there that we should give students the opportunity to like figure that out too. Do you know what I mean? Like, not just limit what their offerings are, but what kind of consumers do they want to be? So I would hate to limit that so much so that it removes that opportunity for them.
But there's also, I think, responsibility of the school district to be role models. That's why I like the idea of like ice cream once a week, because that's,
I agree.
yeah, you can have it, but maybe not every day. And so that seemed, it's sort of striking that balance.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
agree with you, but I also feel like, we're trying to be good role models of health and nutrition and exercise, and I get that too.
All right,
Okay. Thank you.
moving forward. So we have 7 policies that our group reviewed, and these are outside of our typical schedule, but they came at the recommendation of the MASC based on legal changes regarding Title IX. They're very similar, but I will go through them noting the major changes, and then there 3 new policies came from these recommendations.
If I could just interject there, good segue. These were all combined policies in the past, and now the MASC has separated them all out into what you see here tonight. So there's a lot of redundancy in the policies, but that's how they chose to reorganize it.
Yes. All right. AC. That was the easy one with some minor rewording, very minor. Next. ACR had some minor rewording and then some sections that were moved to another policy, which is ACAB, which we'll talk about in a minute. Do you want me to roll through and then ask questions at the end? Yeah, okay.
Is the retaliation stuff new in ACR, or that's just moved?
I'll have to pull it up. That's fine. You want to go through ACR? Hold on. Sorry.
Okay, I think. I see, it's more fleshed out in ACAB.
Did you answer your own question?
I think I did.
Okay. Sorry, I just pulled up the folder again. Okay. ACA had some rewording. And then I think the most notable thing was that it added a specific notification to be distributed to the school community. So that's like an operational piece that we're going to follow through with. ACAB had some rewording. So ACAR is a new policy that took some information from some of the other policies and made it its own policy. It also just gives more detail to the role of the Title IX coordinator. ACGA is a new policy that specifies the civil rights grievance procedure. And I just want to note for this policy and the next one, I need to go back and add in the contacts that it wants listed in the policy, which is going to be,
Director of People Personnel Services.
yes,
We'll probably just put the position in there, which we have to name
yes.
the person itself.
And then the last one is ACGB, which is another new policy, which specifies the Title IX sexual discrimination grievance procedure. These were very heavy to go through, so we welcome conversation and questions now.
It doesn't seem like there's a ton of new
Right.
information.
It's a lot of legal stuff.
We called it billable hours.
Yes.
It just feels like a lot of rearranging things in a way that just rephrases stuff in a different language.
I mean,
Is it useful,
granted,
maybe?
the Title IX provisions were revised last year. So I think some of the information is new, but the bulk of it is reorganization of existing policy.
And that's why you might have seen it in the folder as well. There's a legal update that talks about why MASC recommends these changes. How are we doing? Any questions? Okay. And so So like I said, there's technically 3 new policies. So for instance, with the wellness policy, where that's a new policy, we presented it and we'll vote on it at a later date. These policies, I think I'm open to whatever feels right to the committee. They're new policies by name, but they are not technically all new information. So I think whoever is ready to make a motion, we could vote in all 7, or we could go with just the 4 that are not new and then do the 3 new next meeting.
Anyone?
So can we vote on all of them except for the wellness policy?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
one of the
wellness,
options?
we're definitely not.
We're not,
only
okay.
talking about
Right, okay.
other 7, yeah. The policies started in section A.
Would be okay voting on them and then including the note that there was that one update about the point of contact that needs to be added. I'd be okay with that.
Okay, is there a motion?
Sorry, I haven't moved in. Move to,
Yeah, that's fair.
move to support the policies from section A as revised by the policy subcommittee.
Second.
Okay, moved by Kate and second by Haley. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, we got 7-0 and the motion passes. Thank you all. A tricky one for our group. We look forward to more exciting policies moving forward. All right, next, superintendent's administrative report.
Okay, so it's been a busy few weeks since our last meeting. Once again this year, I'm participating in the race, equity, diversity, and inclusion work with fellow superintendents across the Commonwealth. Our first session was entitled From Vision to Impact, What Gets in the Way and How Building Equity Systems Can Make a Difference. The series this year will focus on persuasive communication. I met several times with teachers from the Winthrop School to address an odor in the building that we've been chasing. This afternoon, I met with someone from the state to help us figure it out. And I think we have it narrowed down. As you've likely heard by now, and we talked earlier this evening, the school committee's reached tentative agreements with the 3 IEA bargaining units. I've been involved in numerous meetings preparing for and working through the negotiations issues along with the tentative agreements and back and forth with legal counsel around language and timing of things. Once the IEA ratifies the contracts, they'll come before the school committee, I anticipate at the next meeting for ratification as well. Our administrative team meeting last week focused on our student registration process and trying to clean that up and make it a little bit easier for folks that are registering students. We talked about the necessary documentation and what is required in order to register students who are coming in either as immigrants or the refugee population or homeless, and what the differences are in the required paperwork. So we spent a considerable amount of time talking about that. We also talked about some safety and security updates. We had a brief discussion on funding sources for student needs. Tracy discussed the upcoming Professional Development Day, the AMCAS results, which we'll be getting a presentation on in a couple of meetings, and shared the plan for that meeting as well as the meeting where we'll be sharing the strategy for district improvement and the school improvement plans. And then Eric Oxford reviewed the restraint and timeout reporting procedures from DESE and the development of our crisis teams in our building. I attended a brief Crest board meeting where we approved one of their bargaining unit agreements. Thursday, I attended a training session with police and fire from around the area, the North Shore. around crisis responses and the incident command system. They're running a series of trainings over the next month and a half that'll culminate with a simulated drill at an old building in Salisbury. So I attended that with one of the elementary principals, and then the other administrators are going to some of the other trainings. It's been offered several times. On Friday, we had the North Shore Superintendent's meeting. We had a special presentation by Todd McGee, who did the safety audit here a couple of years ago. He's presented on trauma-informed de-escalation training for educators around emotionally charged situations. This week, I was able to spend time in each of the buildings, talking with folks and addressing a variety of issues. Yesterday, I had a Zoom meeting with a representative from the Safe Routes to School program, where we reviewed the various programs that are available to us. All of our schools will be participating in the Safe Walk to School program next week. So you'll be hearing more about that and seeing lots of students walking or riding from various places in town. Yesterday seemed to be the day of meetings. We started out the afternoon with the DEI group. We had our first meeting of the year. I then had a meeting with Tom Gallagher and the IEF athletic folks to talk about how they can support our athletic programs through the IEF and what our needs are. Then the stadium building committee also met last night, and I think Jen will be reporting out on that perhaps later. And then finished out the night with the elementary building project working group. So it was a long evening. Today I walked both elementary schools with Hayden Locke, Safe and Locke, who's doing the rekeying project. And then I mentioned earlier, I met earlier with a gentleman from the state to figure out what's going on with the odor at Winthrop. And hopefully the next meeting I'll have an update to let you know how that resolved. Tomorrow morning I have a quarterly meeting with other stakeholder groups from the community at the YMCA. And then a tech update with our Director of Technology and Digital Learning Specialist. And that's it. Lots going on.
Thank you. All right, subcommittee working group and liaison reports. I will run down the list. Budget met, yes?
We did. Budget met 2 days ago on Tuesday. Sasha was not in attendance, so we decided to defer voting on a chair just until we were all present. So we'll do that next time we meet. So I ran the meeting as the senior person. So it was myself and Jen and Tom. And Charlie was there. So we just had preliminary FY26, which seems hard to believe. Budget discussions. We reviewed the budget calendar. So it's just sort of getting us up to speed on. Tom got us up to speed on the closeout of FY24. So it was pretty preliminary, but good to get a meeting on the books. And we are meeting, I believe, again on the 30th.
Awesome.
Budget calendar is in the folder.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So the draft budget calendar is in the folder. We need to sort of, because you're not on budget, sort of liaison with the town folks and make sure our budget calendar aligns with theirs and
Okay.
that sort of offline, but.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds
So
like
as
a
of
good plan.
now, this does not align with the town because I haven't seen it, so
Okay.
when it does come out, obviously this will need to adjust to accommodate the town requirements for deadlines and so forth.
Should we be sending our draft to them first, or do we wait for them?
I think we would follow their lead.
Okay.
Because they're going to set, finance committee meetings and then they'll have deadlines for material to get to the town manager's office. And
Okay.
it'll be set by the town manager's office for all town departments.
And we'll just comply with, as the police would, fire department, DPW, it'll be.
They have a lot more meetings to, I mean,
Right, they have more-
FinCom's got to
yeah,
meet with everybody, so
They-
they
they
should
meet-
have fit us in.
There's a lot more meetings, and essentially what happens is the town calendar, they have to sort of back into it by law. So there's certain deadlines and certain dates that are specific, and then we back into the rest of the dates from that.
I think in general, it aligns with the budget calendar from last year, which was, I think, worked pretty well. The tricky thing with agenda planning for us is with February, essentially. February is tough because we have to try to figure out how to make all the meetings, but also have us try to meet, and there's
Yeah.
vacation week and et cetera. So we did it last year, we can do it again, but it just will take a little bit of planning.
Okay, great.
Quickly say thanks for putting together the initial draft. One of the big changes last year, which I see here again, was building an extra time for review from the town and from boards, which I think went very well last year, and so it's nice to see that carried over again.
Yeah.
Gives us a tighter turnaround with the budget or the full committee, but as long as we know that.
Full faith in us. Full faith in us.
Great. All right. Communications has not met. Mutual concerns. Is that up and running yet?
Oh, no, because we were waiting for, yes. So once, when that's all done and done,
Great.
I'll move forward with the contact and
Wonderful.
let her know.
Great. All right. We touched upon negotiations. Operations.
I don't have an update. We haven't met since the last time. I did put together the goals based on what we did the last time, but then after the workshop, I wanted to kind of overlay some of the guiding principles from that. You followed up, I think, somebody did with the document that we talked about for that. So I need to do that still. But could we put it on the agenda for us to review as a committee for the 17th? How does the agenda look?
Yeah.
Is there room for that? Okay. And then we
Um,
can decide, as we had agreed, if you guys want to look at it first, if we would need to meet again as a subcommittee before the 17th.
okay. Great. I'm glad that is underway. Heard from policy, FEFI's policy working group.
Oh, we met, back on September 18th. So that was our first meeting. So we essentially, and it's a new group. Matt continued from last year, but Diana and I, right?
I've been there.
Are new. Oh, you were
You're
there
new.
last time too? Because I guess I'm the only new one, and I'm chair. So I got up to speed on what happened last year, and we just sort of discussed a plan of action for this year. It's a lot of things we can do, and it sort of we went down rabbit holes, but I think it was a really good conversation, I thought. And so we're trying to just sort of come up with some concrete and achievable goals for this school year, and so I think we have another meeting scheduled. So I think we'll make some good progress.
Great. All right. We heard from the elementary group. Liaison reports. First, Jenny.
Yeah, sure. Can I read what the purpose of the board is?
Sure.
Or the
And this is for the bicycle, and pedestrian.
Advisory Board.
Sure.
Yes. The purpose of this advisory board is to provide community leaders and Ipswich residents with a variety of safety imperatives and business initiatives, both near and long term, to make Ipswich a safer, more practical, accessible, and economically attractive place for residents and visitors to cycle and bike. Cycle and walk. Information provided by the board will allow managers and residents to better appreciate community needs, identify a range of opportunities, envision various planning scenarios, and make thoughtful and effective decisions. So I'm looking forward to this connection. And I spoke with Chris Chapman about a current grant that's actually due tomorrow, but we realized that there's some information that we need. So we're not able to make that deadline, but we talked about how to connect with the DPW to get all of our ducks in a row. So when the next round of grants come about, we can sort of look at these envelopes and say, oh, that one fits that, that one fits that. So there's some more information that we need to put together, but it's going to be great to work with them. So they meet the second Thursday of the month at Town Hall. Brian, we would love for you to be there, but you're a very busy guy. So the alternative, Chris and I would like to meet with you at some point during the school day periodically to just check in and get your thoughts on different projects.
Great. Thank you for being the liaison to that group. And I'm glad that group reached out last year, asking for us to participate. And thanks for raising your hand. I think it's good work. All right. Jen, do you have an update on turf field?
Yeah, so the turf field met at one of the meetings yesterday that Dr. Blank attended. So this is the last phase of the turf field project. And one thing that I think they're going to do, they've heard us loud and clear that the Payne grant money, the $140,000 that came from the Payne grant, needs to be spent on a timeline by next year. So what they'd like to do is update the school committee in November on what the progress is, but also the history of the project and where, approval along the way. So they are going to get on an agenda with a presentation for a November timeframe and let us know where they are with it and where they are with the spending and future plans. Sound right?
Right. Any other liaisons?
I just wanted to mention, I emailed with Peter Janolfi, who's chairing the Payne Grant Committee again this year. He had mentioned at the presentation in the spring that they were hoping to kind of move forward the process this year. So he was hoping to put a timeline together sometime in the fall. And I suggested maybe like once you guys had your first couple policy meetings and we had an idea of like what policies might be shifting and how that could inform things, if I could try to get up to date a little bit on what you guys are working on. And we said maybe like we could earmark November or late November to meet. So then he can kind of start thinking about putting together a timeline, and he wanted to come to us with that. So just a quick update there.
That's great. Did you put that in your notes, Kate, for our next meeting? Okay, good. That's
I have
all
strategic.
working towards the same thing.
I had strategic planning committee met last night. We continue to revise that model that we had the update on at the tri-board with all of the planning scenarios. We are waiting on the SB strategic planning committee is waiting on some final numbers from school committee in terms of what are they supposed to model. I told them they're looking for a number to plug in for a feasibility study. Sasha knows all this. And also the % MSBA reimbursement to use is, so, as everybody knows, they have that. If one school, $60 million, 40% MSBA reimbursement right now, and they have nothing in there for feasibility, so that needs to be added. So they're just sort of waiting on those numbers from our vote on the 17th, but also from the elementary building project working group. So they're fine to wait on that. I did give this strategic planning committee the data that I had on Whittier that I got from Carol Sullivan. That also isn't in the model yet, but it will be added. And it was a good meeting, and we had a lot of good discussions about, I think the tri-board, the model is really overwhelming, and there's a lot of projects, and they're really expensive. But we had some good discussions last night about how things like new growth over time, I mean, if these big projects like public safety and school buildings are going to be bonded over 30 years, even the small new growth we have in Ipswich over 30 years, that will build the tax base and will help offset some of this. I mean, it's not a lot, but it is significant when you look at it over that long period of time. And the other thing we talked about was there's a lot of existing debt between the town, and schools have a little bit. But over, again, if you're looking over a 30-year period, we'll be paying things off. So yeah, yes, our taxes will be going up for all these big projects, but taxes will sort of be going down as we start to pay things off. So we're trying to figure out how to sort of work that into the model. So it's a little bit of a mind twist to try to like think that strategically and long term, but it's great. I think it's a good committee, and it's really smart people putting a lot of work into it. So it's good. And our goal is to have wrap it up by the end of the calendar year with some scenarios to present to the community.
I have a question, I guess, about that. When you say wrap up by the end of the year and present to the community, like what does that look like? Just publishing a report? Or
I'm not exactly sure
Okay.
yet, but yeah, some kind of report. Yeah, I think that's the plan.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, IEF met early in September. I don't know if there was a report.
out already.
Yeah, because I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't know if you meet again this Monday, although I can't be there for that one. Can you?
I will.
I'm not in Central Mass for PD again, but.
It's interesting. I'll just side commentary a little bit here. Very quickly, we put out collectively between the IEF and the school district the document around all of the various funding sources for grants, et cetera. And we're seeing a significant uptick in the number of grant applications that are coming forward to the IEF. They have several on the agenda for Monday night, as well as the paying grants and the requests through the various funds in IEF. The IEF is sort of an umbrella, and within that, there's certain funds. And we're seeing a lot of grants come forward for the different funding programs as a result of, I think as a result of that coordinated effort. So we're fortunate in Ipswich to have the wide variety of funding sources that we have to support all of these efforts.
Softball field, perfect example.
Yeah. It's great. Anybody else? Okay, new business.
Congrats to the boys soccer team who just won 3-0 tonight. Just came in.
Yay. Great new business. We have no vouchers and bills. So next is the consent agenda. Move the Ipswich School Committee to approve the meeting minutes from September 12th, 2024 and September 19th, 2024.
Second.
All right, moved by me, second by Kate. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, 7-0, motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
8:59.
Moved by Jenny, second by Jen. Well done. All in favor?
Yes. Yay.
All right, we are
Before
adjourned at
9.
8:59. Yay.
Good job.